You want
Water, right?
Yeah, he doesn't look good. Okay,
All right, good morning. Good morning, everyone.
yeah.
It is 9 a.m. and we'll call the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee meeting to order for October 24th. I would ask, first of all, for a motion to approve the minutes of the prior committee meeting, which was on September 26th. Hopefully, I had an opportunity to review those. Motion by Supervisor Diamond, second Supervisor Driscoll. Any question or discussion on those? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carry. We'll open privilege over the floor. Any comments before we get to agenda items? Seeing none, we'll start off with probation. We have our director here. The first item is a request, a one-time payment for interpreter services in the amount of $160 to Anthony Rodriguez for Spanish translation for service on July 18th, 2022. Anything else on that?
No, I'd just like to have a few comments on that, but good morning and thank you. I know the one time the payment as we're doing this with the board is not the preferred method. I believe that contracts are the way to go, but the small amount of business we do with interpreters prohibits us from contracting with anybody due to the requirements that the county would require for insurance and those type of things. This is the second time we've done this year. We're going to have to do it again. We have a PSI interview where the defendant speaks Spanish. So I just put that out there that I know this is not the preferred way to do it, but if we're going to spend $500 a year, I'm not going to be able to have anybody contract with me. And I don't think there's anybody in the county I can piggyback off. I know there's some that do it by phone, which isn't the best way. I mean, we have a solution to most of it. So I put that out there knowing that this is not the best, but it's all I have at this point. So.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. We've discussed in both committee and at board meetings, like travel requests and those types of trainings and everything. If it doesn't exceed $500, you don't have to go through the process of getting all the necessary signatures coming before the committee and taking up a lot of time on really, low budget requests. Could we entertain a discussion about maybe having a threshold where Bob wouldn't have to come before us, each time he has that type of a situation? I don't know how the process would go, but
I'm not sure if that requires full board.
I think that's much earlier.
Okay.
The answer is you can discuss it, but we can't do it. There's a difference between paying employee expenses and contracting with an outside entity.
Okay.
I know when I came on board, we had some initial discussions about this with the director of probation. We'll think some more if there's some creative way, but the basic problem is there's some contracting rules in place for New York State. And some basic requirements that prevent us from getting into the typical multi-year, longer-term agreement. Plus, these tend to be a little bit hit or miss, meaning who's available on
Sure.
a day is sometimes who you have to go with.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, but if we could take a look at that at your convenience, that would be.
Having suffered through telephone clients of mine, it's a tough way to go.
Okay.
All right, so we have a request for today, so I ask that we move on that one. Supervisor McDevitt, second. Supervisor Driscoll. Any discussion, further questions on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The second item is a request to amend the contract with Mediation Matters to increase the amount of the contract from $6,100 to $25,155 for restorative practices training regarding the Y Reconnects grant pursuant to Resolution 217 of 2022.
Yes, we initially contracted with Mediation Matters for $6,100 regarding this grant. We were able to carry over some funds that we did not use from last year. And then we moved some other funds around that we're not going to use with this grant. So we'd like to increase the funding for Mediation Matters. They're prepared to do some restorative circles for community partners. White House is very interested. We've met with them and discussed certain things. So we'd like to put more money we have the money to use. We'd like to allocate it towards contracting with mediation matters for restorative practice. And this would increase the amount from 6,100 to 25,155.
Okay, motion to move this forward. Supervisor McDevitt, second. Supervisor Diamond, any discussion, further questions?
I can do that. What does this program actually do? What do they do?
The Y Reconnects program is a grant that's situated through Cornell and some partners with the state. And what it looks to do is to increase the outcome of youth with disabilities who come into the criminal justice system. So it's a way to start changing the system in the way we think. And what we did with Y Reconnects is we partnered with different community agencies. Matters was one of them that provides restorative practices, not only training to the other members of the group, but other interested parties who are looking to do business a little bit different in a restorative manner as opposed to a punitive manner.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I don't believe there's any further discussion
I
item.
have nothing else.
Thank you for being with
Thank
us
you.
today.
Good morning.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Office of Emergency Services, our Director Anne Marie Mason is here. We've got one agenda item, request to amend resolutions 176 and 327 of 2022 to add and remove members of the EMS Advisory Board. Anne Marie?
Good morning. So we're just looking to update the list of members. We're looking to appoint two people to the membership. Corey Willett and Jason Miller will be representing Warrensburg and West Glens Falls. And we're looking to remove three members, Kevin Healy from Warrensburg, Robert Boyle from West Glens Falls, and Mickey Guy from EMS Coordinator.
Should move this request forward. Supervisor Diamond, second by Supervisor Driscoll. Any questions for Anne Marie on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Anne Marie, anything else you want to discuss?
Nope, that's it.
Terrific. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Public Defender agenda. We got two requests. The first is to increase or decrease the salary of non-union position, which is the coordinating attorney public defender. And I believe this one is completely funded by ILS. Greg?
Thank you. Good morning, honorable committee members. In approximately 2020, 2021, ILS had established a supervisory attorney position. Its primary function was to oversee attorneys in the various courts, to check their files, to make sure that their motion practice was of high quality and that they were satisfying the high standards that both our county and the state impose upon the public defenders throughout the state. They started this salary at $94,000 a year. However, we were unable to satisfy that position, and we could not find qualified candidates. We believe it might have had something to do with the COVID restrictions that struck our country in April of 2020. But be that as it may, for many months, this position remained unfulfilled, and ILS was threatening to perhaps take the funds from us. So we sought to reduce the salary to $81,000 in hopes of finding an entry level position. Even that created some problems until we were finally able to install one of our in-house public defenders who did have some experience in the Suffolk County Public Defender's Office. That particular assistant public defender was in the position for approximately 4 to 5 weeks, and then he left to take up employment with Saratoga County Public Defender's Office in search of a higher salary. We searched high and low, and were blessed with being able to recruit a very competent and highly experienced attorney whose work product was phenomenal and has lifted the entire office's standard of work product. She specializes in omnibus motions, reviewing pleadings and legal memorandums. However, we've had to increase her salary due to her many years of experience. And that's why we are seeking to bring back up the salary from the 81 to the 97, which is something that she indicated she would stay at that salary level, despite having multiple opportunities from other various state agencies offering to pay her up to near 120,000. So we come here seeking your support so that I can retain this highly qualified attorney to assist and to raise the standards of our office tremendously. It's 100% ILS funded. There'll be no additional cost to the taxpayers of Warren County, and we will benefit immensely from her high quality standards.
Thank you. Motion to move this request forward. Supervisor Diamond, second Supervisor McDevitt. Any questions or further discussion for Greg?
Maybe just a comment, Greg. You know, I just think it's a reflection of the world we live in. I mean, we have to pay for good qualified people, and it's just it's the world we live in, and hopefully we get the right person and they do a great job and everyone wins. And I think in that regard, so it's just it's the world we live in.
And my obligation is to make sure the person meets that qualification and quality, and I can assure this board that this person does.
Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you, Chairman. But aside from the qualities of this particular person, I understood that the base salary was the 97,310 before it got lowered, trying to find somebody. So I will support it going back to where it was, because this is the supervising attorney trying to get someone with experience, not an entry level person.
That's my understanding as well. Supervisor.
I'm gonna have to look forward to the assistant county administrator. Is this the base salary that we adjusted for the 275 increase at the last? On what the base salary is according to our vote last Friday. That was one. Supervisor Bramer, you had brought up a question on.
That was the same one.
Yeah, thank you.
Then this is the higher, because
Yeah,
it was lower than this.
Is that the same one?
Yeah, it's not the base, they're bringing it up to the fifth year, correct? And that is the correct dollar amount.
But I mean, the former annual base salary.
It was
It-
lower.
Right, this is adjusted, this base salary is adjusted for the 275, if that was the question, was that the question?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Greg on this? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. You have a second request for a new contract with Westlaw. Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you. Again, this is completely supplemented by ILS and will not in any way add to the county taxpayer base or obligation. The reason why we need a Westlaw subscription for two of our legal researchers is primarily because the state courts use Westlaw. It's the West Publishing System, and the entire state courts, including our county court and Supreme Court, use and refer to the Westlaw citations of recently released advance sheets. And it's also very advantageous for us to have the Westlaw subscription. Most law firms and counties and state agencies use the Westlaw programming.
Thank you. Motion to move this request forward. Supervisor Driscoll. Second, Supervisor McDevitt. Any questions or discussion? Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. Is this going to be in addition to another legal research?
A lot of the
Platform.
attorneys are trained on Lexis, and it's very inexpensive. We asked how they felt about transitioning over to Westlaw, and then when we looked at getting a subscription for all the attorneys using Westlaw, it became more expensive than maintaining the two subscriptions. So actually, we're saving money. I think there's only two subscriptions on our Westlaw subscription, 2 users. And the rest of the lawyers are using LexisNexis. They're happy for that. If we were to transition all of them over to Westlaw, it would be even more expensive in the long run.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Larry.
The contract's actually for 4 attorney licenses. And I'm not familiar with why the different departments with attorney and county all seem to have separate contracts for Lexus and Westlaw. And I'm just curious if there's some ability to survey and determine if there may be an ability across the county to either save money or combine service under a single contract. And I don't want to trip up the need your department has in any way. But once you lock in these contracts, they're 3-year contracts, regardless of which provider you're using. I just pose that question because we have about plus or minus maybe 20 attorneys in total in the county. And there are certain benefits which the public defender laid out to Westlaw accepts, which would assist in our attorneys and counties.
Well, we would be glad to look into what other departments countywide use Westlaw to see if we could provide our efforts and negotiate a better contract with West Publishing Company.
So I don't know if there's a desire for your office to hold this for 30 days so we can do that work. Again, I don't want to affect your operational needs. If there's a way that assist maybe a better price with more attorneys across the county and a way to effectively work that out.
Is this for 2023? Or is it short term that you need something sooner?
It's a 3-year contract starting in 2023.
Okay.
For 2023, 24, and 25. And I think that if I could send an email to the contact person, let him know what we're trying to do, I think we could maybe extend, we've got a couple of like trial user IDs, if we could extend those and still have access to it in the office. But I think he would be very open to doing that.
Okay. So without objection, we'll hold the motions. We'll table this for 30 days till the next committee meeting.
That'd be
And
wonderful.
and will you take the lead or your office take the lead on talking with the DA and other attorneys in the county? Okay. Thank you, Larry. Thank you for raising that. Any other discussion items? Thank you for being here, Greg. Appreciate it. All right. Last item of business is the sheriff. Sheriff, we've got 5 requests today. I believe the first one is to enter into an agreement with the Glens Falls City School District for school resource officer services.
Yes,
Explain
the
that
city of
for us.
Glens Falls reached out last month and they would like to collaborate with us. And they have a full-time Glens Falls school resource officer from the city of Glens Falls Police Department. And they were asking if we could provide an officer on a part-time basis, 40 hours a week, but a part-time retiree. We have an officer or 2 in mind, and we would like to enter into that agreement. I think it would be wonderful to collaborate with Glens Falls on this project.
Terrific. Motion to move this forward. Supervisor McDevitt, second. Supervisor Diamond, any questions, discussion? Supervisor Brammer?
I should know this, but has the school board already approved that?
We've met with the superintendent and I've gotten her approval to move forward. I do not know how far she's taken it on her side.
Okay, I can follow up.
Just a question to clarify what the title is going to be for this school resource officer. Is it going to be a special patrol officer under the civil service?
We're moving to all special patrol officers with our school resource officers. Part-time.
Supervisor Brammer?
Is that probably isn't in effect yet though, right? These are still regular officers
These are police
as of
officers.
right now.
Yes, and they will remain police officers. It's a civil service title that allows them under the civil service law to work more than 1,040 hours per year or 20 hours per week. It will satisfy the requirements of state and county civil service for a part-time person to work in these positions.
Supervisor Driscoll?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just interested, Sheriff, in is this individual focused on the high school and middle school, or does that include the elementary schools also?
When we enter into these agreements with the school districts, we pretty much let them know that the officers are ours. They're going to be police officers and perform the police functions. But where they serve, how they serve, their scheduling really will be at the determination of the school, the administration.
Okay,
And same thing like all of our other school districts, it's going to be a positive impact. If I would assume, especially in the city of Glens Falls, if there's a call for service, if there's need for criminal action. For us, our school resource officers step aside, we call in an outside officer for the city. I'm sure it's going to be a Glens Falls City Police Officer. But there've been a couple calls in the school district already this year. We respond to each one. I think it would be great to have an officer on site that knows the school, knows the faculties. That would be an extra set of law enforcement eyes and ears right on the floor as these calls come in.
there's another question too, please. Have you had communications, or I'm just curious about Abraham Wing School and St. Mary's?
Have not.
Okay,
We don't push this on any school district. As you know, Warrensburg does not have a school resource officer. It's something that we're happy to provide. We'd love to provide the service. I know there's absolutely value in it. But we don't solicit. If they call, we'll do the research and we'll see if we can find a candidate, and then we try to move forward.
thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor Bramer.
I know, sorry, I just have to follow up one more time on my question about the officers. You mentioned they're retired, but I guess my concern is the officers are all up to date on training. They're full officers. They're not
Yes,
just retired people who are now serving in this other role.
Correct.
They like are reactivated. I know I'm not saying the right words.
they'll come to our training. They'll qualify at the range each year. They'll receive legal updates, anything related to use of force. They are our officers. They're all retired as police officers, fully trained. We don't take a civilian and put them into the school district and give them the title as a special patrol officer.
Right, okay.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The second request is to amend the county budget to reflect the appropriate revenue and expense codes for the first half of the 2022 and 23 school resource officer agreement.
This just allows us to have the funding. We've entered into the agreements with each school district. They provided the funding. This just puts them into each of the code for the appropriate school districts.
Motion to move this request forward. Supervisor Devitt, second Supervisor Diamond. Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carry. Thank you. Third item is a request to amend the county budget to appropriate funds from the county general fund balance to address excessive expenditures in the sheriff's, law enforcement, automotive, gas, oil, and the corrections foods code. Sheriff?
I think we've done an excellent job with our budget this year. It's been a challenging year for the sheriff's office, as it has uncertain for other departments. We are over budget currently for fuel. We will likely, I'm certain we're going to be over budget very soon for foods and corrections. The prices have just increased significantly. We really worked hard to try to find the money within our budget, and for these two codes, we just cannot find it. We also have to go in and address deficits in overtime, part-time codes for corrections and law enforcement. It's something we do every year. It's addressed in another request. These two, we just cannot pay for our fuel and food if we don't get assistance from the county.
Motion moves the request forward. Supervisor Driscoll, second. Supervisor McDevitt. Discussions, questions on it? Supervisor Leggett.
Sheriff, what was the original amount set aside there for automotive gas and oil? And did your department take any corrective actions when prices were going up?
We have not. To be honest, I was kind of hoping we'd get to this point of the year and we could look at some surplus in salaries and move money through this request and not have to ask for money out of the fund balance. Maybe the assistant county administrator could find that. I don't know the exact figure. We worked obviously with the budget team last year. We came up with a number that we thought we would be able to sustain. And we did it again this year. We're just hopeful that prices will stabilize, if not reduce. We thought we had a good figure and just, we couldn't make it.
Are there any other questions while we're looking that up?
have one other.
Go ahead, Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. So on the food, you're doing really well on your revenue for taking on, hosting other inmates. Have we booked that revenue? That also adds up more food, and could any of that revenue be appropriated?
The excess revenue would likely address the deficit in our food. But it's my understanding that we're not able to pull money out of these revenue codes. If we can, I would be more than happy to do that, but I didn't think that we were permitted to do so.
Supervisor Bramer.
I'm sorry, what?
So we
Where-
received
move
revenue
from
for
where?
boarding in federal inmates, and
Right.
what we proposed and projected, we far exceeded that for this year. I think when I looked at it and I was looking at our funding, we were already at almost $70,000 over. We're asking for $75,000 for foods. I've asked the question, I'm certain in years past, if we could pull money, excess money out of those revenue codes to cover a deficit. And I'm confident that the response I was provided was no, we cannot do so. But that's a question for the treasurer's office. Again, that's outside my wheelhouse.
Supervisor Thomas, I think, has an answer to the,
Okay,
to the question that's been raised.
other than this, is there anything else or you have an answer to this?
Just a response to.
Okay, go ahead.
In law enforcement, gas and oil was budgeted at 160,000 for this year. And for foods and corrections, it was 265,000.
Any other questions? Supervisor Bramer.
That doesn't answer our question about the 70,000 in revenue.
Amy, you have a response?
Sure. If you know you're getting the revenue, when we could do a budget amendment instead of so that we would increase both revenue and expenditures versus a transfer out of general fund. We would just have to know what that revenue was going to be, because that's going to offset some of the costs.
That would be smart business. I think if we could, I don't know if you want to reduce this resolution just for the foods and maybe introduce a resolution at finance that would make the budget amendment coming out of the excess revenues and going into cover the deficit for foods. I think that would be a better choice.
All right, so we had a motion to accept this. I think it was Supervisor McDevitt made that. Okay, Supervisor Driscoll. you
Yeah,
made
I
the-
did. I made,
We
it, yeah.
make the amendment. You agree with the?
Yes, yeah, I
amendment?
agree with the amendment. Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
And the second,
So can you clarify?
I would suggest that I would ask for $175,000 to cover fuel out of the general fund. Remove the $75,000 for food and then address the $75,000 deficit in a finance meeting and take it out of the revenue code.
Got a budget amendment.
hey Supervisor McDevitt, you second it? You agree with the
I'm fine.
amendment?
Yeah.
Any discussion or further questions on that?
Just a
Supervisor
clarification.
Driscoll?
So you said you projected or you estimated revenue was about 70,000. So we're only looking at maybe a difference of $5,000.
We're very close and we're
Okay.
still housing federal inmates. We will
Okay,
continue
so,
to do
yeah,
so
going
through the remainder
forward.
of the year. So we're generating revenue throughout the remainder of the year. And I want to say we were very close to $70,000 in excess from our projections already. So I'm certain we'll reach that $75,000 mark by the end of the year.
Want to be sure about that.
Sheriff, this achieves your need? These amendments?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Fourth item is to transfer funds, excuse me, within the 2022 Sheriff's Office budget to address deficits and salary codes.
Yes, each year we have excess in salaries regular, and that's due to vacancies. We have positions that we'd like to hire, but they remain vacant for certain periods of time. So we come to you this time of year and request the transfers to address deficits that we budget in our overtime and part-time codes. I really worked hard to try to make sure we were covering our deficits throughout the end of the year. I'll be honest, I may come to you again next month and ask to move some more money just to cover these deficits, and I'm really hopeful that we can do so within our budget and not have to ask for any additional funding. We're close.
Motion to move the request forward. Supervisor Bramer, second by Supervisor McDevitt. Any questions, discussion on this request? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The final item is to enter a purchase and service agreement with Axon Enterprises and Companies Incorporated for body worn camera systems and next generation taser systems. Sheriff?
Yes, this is a follow-up to our request last month for funding. And at the last meeting, Supervisor Bramer requested a copy of the agreement of the proposed agreement from Axon. We've been working very closely with purchasing in the county attorney's office to hammer that agreement out and make sure that we were following all the requirements. We have the agreement in place. It's included in your packet. The agreement's going to be for a 5-year term. We couldn't enter into a 10-year term at the recommendation or with the restrictions from the county attorney's office following their review. The pricing stayed, I think it actually came down a little bit to $254,984 per year. So it would be a 5-year agreement. And it would allow us to purchase the body worn cameras, the updated tasers, and all the systems that we would need to have our program.
Thank you. Motion to move this forward. Supervisor Driscoll. Second, Supervisor McDevitt. Any questions, discussion? Supervisor Brand.
I'm happy to have the contract, and I guess I'm concerned about such a significant sum over the 5-year period. Are we looking at budgeting that through? I guess that's a question for you, Sheriff,
I
through the
believe
time
through
frame.
the request we made last month, that would address 2023. And then we would have to work through the 2024, 25, going through the budget process, we would have to budget this for each year.
Any other questions? All right.
I just wanted to amplify one portion of what the sheriff stated. This was not bid. We're doing this contract through Sourcewell, which is a national entity that collects bids. And we're using the contract that Axon has with Sourcewell that other municipalities access and use as well. It's a 5-year term. I would ask that the resolution approving be amended to give the county attorney's office the opportunity to negotiate an additional 5-year extension based on 2022 prices, if approved by a further vote of the Board of Supervisors. So as a matter of contracting policy, we almost always stick with a 3-year term. In very rare circumstances, when there's substantial amount of upfront costs for equipment, such as copier contracts, and in this case, the actual hardware of the cameras and tasers and other items. There was a broad agreement to do this for 5 years. The initial desire and request for the sheriff was for a 10-year contract, and what we actually were able to do is, with the sheriff's department assistance, keep this contract at a lower annual price for 5 years than what they were proposing for 10. There's a desire to try to lock in this price now if a future board approves a further 5-year term. So I'm asking just for an additional language that gives the county attorney's office the ability to negotiate a renewal term upon the further vote of the board based on the same contract the board would be approving this month.
Sheriff, do you know is that something that Axon would be favorable with?
I'm confident they would. We've had lengthy conversations with the county attorney, with their representatives, and they've worked with us quite well.
Okay, very good. So we had a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion on the amended version of this?
If I need to give permission to amend as the council had recommended. I
Okay,
do
so we have a motion to move forward as amended.
Yes.
Second? Yeah. Great. Any further questions? Supervisor Brandon?
That's just authorizing us now to be able to enter into the additional 5-year term, is what I'm understanding, but the board in the future would still have to authorize that.
It's allowing, if approved by the Board of Supervisors, it'll allow the chairman to sign a contract now which provides for an additional 5-year renewal term in the future, subject to future board approval. Right,
With the 2023 rate
with the current rate,
going forward.
with this contract rate.
Yeah.
Remaining in effect for that next 5-year term. That's subject to Axon. I'm gonna say they're mostly on board, but not completely on board. And we have to agree on language and that trigger of that future vote by the board.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Supervisor McDevitt?
10 years is been bandied around here. 10 years to me, just as a kind of a, not knowing a lot about this, seems like a long time. Maybe it's not in the context of what's happening here. It's spoken as an advantage, the ability to get 10 years. So is it?
I was looking at it through the wrong lens, and the county attorney really clarified and put things in perspective for me. For us, a body worn camera, taser systems, they're like a firearm or a vehicle for a police officer. We're going to need them. The need's never going to go away. And the price is always going to increase year by year. Paying respect to the supervisors, however, 3 years is a term where you might cross over from one board, the board is going to change a little bit. 10 years, you're certainly going to have movement and change in your board. So out of respect to future board members, you want to afford them the opportunity to have their own vote and make their own decisions. We have tested the Axon product as well as others. It's sound. The program that they have, if we damage a body worn camera, they're just going to replace it for us. I am very comfortable entering into this agreement and would have no concerns 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now for their product, their service, anything related to this agreement.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Sheriff. Once this is all signed, do you have an idea roughly of the implementation phase, when you actually think you might see these arriving and?
We hope to have it rolled out probably the later part of the first quarter of 2023. But there's going to be a training component. We want to make sure that our policies and procedures are sound and in place. There'll be, we don't just hand out the cameras and say, here we go, get started. There's a lot to get us up and running.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
This agreement would be effective plus or minus January 1st of
Okay.
2020.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the amended version of this. Any further questions, Supervisor?
I just
Blamer?
have another question, circling back to the bidding process. It wasn't competitively bid, but our county attorney was saying something about
There's a.
or piggybacking off another municipal contract. So did they do the competitive bid?
No, we're not, it's not a municipal entity, I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's an entity that exists and it's called Sourcewell. I was not familiar with it until the purchasing officer explained it to me. They do national bidding for all member municipalities, and Warren County is a member of Sourcewell. And we are authorized by state law to use the contract that they've already bid and received bids on, Axon being one of them. There was a list of other bids from other suppliers. Anecdotally, it appears Axon is probably the market leader as far as scope of municipalities served. And my involvement has nothing to do with the technical requirements, but the sheriff and his department have stated that they believe that this particular business meets all of their technical needs for the services, not just for body cameras, but also for tasers as well. And what I didn't appreciate, and I apologize because I tend to talk too much, occupational hazard. There's an enormous technology side and technical side behind these items. I've dealt with video from body cameras in private practice years ago, but I had no real understanding or sense of the incredible framework of technology that is going to get laid on top of the sheriff's department in the implementation and future use of these items. From a county attorney's perspective and liability perspective, I am amazingly grateful that the sheriff's department's moving forward with body cameras, because they are, anecdotally, I've been told by other counties and departments that have them that they are always going to be the best evidence as compared to statements by individuals of what they saw and what might have been said and what occurred. And I, again, in private practice, have personal experience with how different the video of a body camera footage is from what's reported as having occurred by eyewitnesses. So from a liability perspective, I think it's going to be tremendous for the county and sheriff's department going forward, because they'll have immediate access to what actually occurred, as we all know from watching the news. The video is king right now, or queen. And personal recollections takes that. So even though the number may seem like it's a large number of multiple years, I gotta believe there's gonna be some offsetting of future events where liability will be reduced or negated because the sheriff and the sheriff's department is taking this step forward now. While expensive, I'm hard pressed that if the county doesn't do it, we're not going to be behind and left out, but what is considered a floor of requirements for municipalities, not just in the state of New York, but in the United States.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Supervisor Brandon?
Okay, on that, I have two questions. One is about the IT. And in the contract, it does look like there's some training. Have you talked to Mike Colvin about how to integrate this with our cybersecurity and that sort of thing? Or will he be brought on board with training?
I don't believe this is going to affect Mike Colvin and his team at all. Our in-house computer technologies people.
Oh,
It's going to be a self-sustaining program, and it will not connect to the file server at the county. Something that, I mean,
Great.
it's information that it sometimes confidential, we control for criminal investigations. We have to make sure that we are addressing all the needs for the Freedom of Information Law. And the release of these are becoming business records, the recordings, so it will all stay in-house in its own independent system.
mhm. Okay, the other question is, are there any insurance implications? I'm thinking savings. Do we have any idea if it'll help with county liability?
Not today, but we have a meeting coming up with our brokers later this month to have that larger discussion. And part of what I want to make sure they see and understand once this is on the track to being approved is that this is something we're looking to do
Mhm.
for our firm. I can't say that. I don't know if there's a dollar for, some dollar for dollar reduction because officers are wearing them. But they're certainly going to be informed in the next days or weeks.
Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you. Sheriff acts on a citizen for communities as well as their acts on third-party storage. Features of the contract here, we use for those of where you can invite individual witnesses or the entire community to submit photos and videos of an incident directly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the county attorney hit it right on the head. People's perspective of an event, especially something that's traumatic, every perspective is unique and different, and sometimes they vary. You can talk to 5 people that all witness the same thing. For something like this, if we have a personnel complaint, the simple of personnel complaints on a traffic stop, you can invite the subject in, you can invite family members in, you can share with the media and, well, yes, this occurred. And yes, it requires corrective action and we are going to address it, or we'd like you to watch it because what's being described is not a clear description of what actually transpired. And here, just watch the video. It's going to be case by case. If we have something that is a significant incident, we get requests from the media immediately. And if it's an active investigation, there may be some timeliness or a delay in what we release and how we release it, but we are an open book and we try to make sure that we share with our community everything that we can. If we can put our community at ease so that they know that they're not in harm's way or in danger for certain incidents, and we can show a video, we have nothing to hide. We'll use this for training and it will definitely be a value.
Any other questions? So I'll have to get you in privilege of the floor. Anything else from the committee? All right, all those in favor?
Hi.
Hi.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Sheriff, for that
Yes.
thorough discussion. You have one discussion item. This was an issue that was raised at our last meeting by Supervisor Sieber, based on a meeting that we had at the New York State Association of Counties meeting in reference to the medication assisted treatment program and prime care medical agreement. There was some concern about increased expense and requirements. So we just wanted some details on from your perspective.
Yes, certainly. In general terms, medicated assisted treatment, it's something we've been doing since 2020, as long as I've been sheriff. And medication, obviously, FDA approved medicines to address alcohol and opioid use disorders are provided by prime care medical staff, as well as counseling and mental health care. Inmates, when they arrive and are booked in, they're screened by medical. And previously, we would have maybe 12 inmates out of our, say, 100 that were in a MAT program. And the CASAC, the Certified Drug and Alcohol Substance Abuse Counselor, they'll do an interview, and rarely would they initiate a program for somebody that was not in a MAT program prior to incarceration. It occurred, but it was rare. If somebody was in a MAT program on the outside before coming to be housed with us, we would bridge that person, and they would remain in the program voluntarily. It's not required. If they want to be in the program, they can. But they receive medications, they receive additional counseling. Anyone that comes in who needs detox separate from that, of course, they're going to receive that treatment. The legislation was introduced early this year. It took effect October this year. And since MAT has picked up this month, we've gone from 12. Today we have 24. We have 95 inmates in our facility, 24 in the MAT program. It's roughly about $12 a day from Prime Care for these services. In the current agreement, there's some catastrophic limitations, $290,000 per year that are built into the agreement. And it's common for us to get some money back from that. There may be an offset there. There's also something built into the agreement that would require us to compensate for any additional services that are provided. These are required services. We do not have the ability to say, no, you're not going to be participating in this program. And to make it clear, the sheriff's administration, the corrections officers, we have nothing to do with determinations of eligibility, implementation of the program, how the program's administered. It is all done medically by the prime care professionals. If we have an inmate in a program and they test positive during the program, or if they receive a disciplinary sanction, they are not removed from the program based upon a positive test or disciplinary sanction. This, again, is something that they are entitled to receive as long as they would like to receive, and prime care determines they are eligible. It's going to be a moving target for us for next year as far as what it's going to cost. When we went through a budget workshop, we did ask for additional funding and contracts for corrections. And that funding really met what our addendum, roughly $25,000, is what prime care was suggesting as a good starting point for next year. But it's going to be hard to say what the requirements are. I've been asked, because there's grant funding that's out there through OASIS that some may think could address these services, and on the outside, they certainly would. But for us, Prime Care Medical, it's a private for-profit company, and these grants cannot be permitted to go to a private company. And as long as I'm sheriff, we are going to make sure that nothing is carved out of Prime Care services. We're not going to isolate and bring in an independent provider and let the two of them try to work together. That is definitely not the best practice. Prime Care provides an exceptional service. They take care of our inmates very well. And again, they cover the county from risk liabilities. It's going to be expensive. Certainly, it's going to increase our contract. Absolutely. And unfortunately, it's another unfunded mandate from New York State that we have to address. And when I say that, there is absolutely a need. We have inmates in our facility who've made some poor choices, who struggle with addiction, who are going to benefit from these services. And if you think big picture and long term, we get them the services while they're housed with us and they get healthy and they're provided a bridge and a re-entry plan upon release, they're going to stand a greater chance of success post-release. And our goal is to make sure that they don't come back. And we're hoping that this MAP program will be a catalyst to help in doing so.
Thank you, Sheriff. Very thorough overview. We appreciate it. Any questions on this for the sheriff? Supervisor Bramer?
I guess one thing on the sheriff's point about the funding from the state, if that's not available to use in our particular circumstance, we have the opioid money, we have some other mental health treatment money that may be available to look at offsetting the cost of the prime care contract.
If it could go to a private business, then by all means, I think that would be a great proposal. I know that the money that Rob York, his office manages, that has to go to a not-for-profit organization.
And prime care is not for profit,
They are for-profit.
they're for profit.
Any other questions on any item for the sheriff? Sheriff, anything else for us?
No, thank you.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Oh, Supervisor
Sure.
Diamond, 1 second. sir.
Do we have opportunity for privilege of the floor?
Yes, that's coming up next.
Okay.
Yeah, anything else for the sheriff though? No, Sheriff, thank you. All right, privilege of floor. I'll go to committee members first. Supervisor Diamond, you have something?
Yes, I do for the sheriff.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sheriff, I was looking at your budget and your 2023 request. Looks like it's about $535,000 less than your adopted budget in 2022. And about $19,000 greater than your actual in 2021. Could you explain to me how you're gonna reduce your, how you reduced your budget by over $500,000 from 23 to 22?
I would think a good chunk of that, $400,000 might relate to the vehicle reserve because we can't make that request. That's going to come in after the fact when the budget officer makes the determination on what our vehicles would be. The remainder, I'd have to go really through it line by line to figure out the remainder of those funds. 88% of our budget, it's really not discretionary. It comes from salaries, overtime, health insurance, retirement, hospitalization, those types of benefits. The other big chunk comes from our contracts that we have to pay for services that we receive. Our discretionary spending in our sheriff's office is very minimal. And we are very tight with what we do. When I explained to you earlier on that we really hope to find the money to address if we have remaining deficits, we've held off on some projects and, not big projects, but we asked for money and we've held off. We have some codes that have a little bit left over and it really is unfortunate that we have to do that, but we don't want to come and ask you for money unless we absolutely have to do so.
Okay, but I mean, I was just curious, looking at the numbers,
That would be the
and
biggest.
you were $500,000 less than last year in your request. I just wanted to make sure that that number was true and accurate, because we did move some monies today from fund balance, and we moved some monies from some other codes to offset the difference, the decreases or the increases in personal services in the corrections department. So I'm just wanted to make sure that this number here that you're suggesting is a workable number.
I'm hoping so. I think we had a really healthy meeting and budget teams and, we worked through the figures. We make our requests. We have, I don't want to call it debate, but how healthy conversations back and forth. And ultimately, I really won't know what my budget is until the budget works, the budget group, tells us what we're going to have. I know that other departments have come forward and they've asked for funding for fuel. I'm confident the budget officer is seeing that from every department. And if I did not request enough, that's going to get picked up and adjusted by the budget officer. I would hope, and I would assume.
Okay, and you did also request about a $900,000 increase in your corrections budget this year compared to last year. Could you explain that increase?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where it would come from. Maybe salaries. We had salary adjustments. I'd have to look at it. I didn't come, my apologies, I didn't come prepared.
Okay.
I'd be more than happy to sit and you and I can meet. We can go through that line by line. If you want to grab an afternoon, we'll come up here and I'll go through everything with you.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you. Any other committee member have any discussion items? All right, Supervisor McGowan, privilege of the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Back onto the body cameras, even though it is very expensive, it is a needed application for our sheriff's department. You see everybody walking around with one of these and really for any incidents, you always get to see what people are out there. So you get all different views, but over and all, it's gonna protect our sheriffs and our county for the most likely a lot of frivolous lawsuits that will come in. But also protect us for future cases where it comes viable. On the grant money for the prime, maybe we can reach out and look at it, that there has to be other monies out there that, the state puts these mandates on there, and then they put in these stipulations, and then they end up changing the wording. And then, so maybe we can reach out and see, what we can do to find some other extra money, but Supervisor from Glens Falls really had a good idea with the opiates and the other monies that we have that we could probably pull from that to help out the sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Over to the floor. Supervisor Thomas.
Yes, to answer some of Supervisor Steinman's questions on corrections. 700,000 of that was salary. 105,000 was increase in medical expense. 39,000 was workers' comp. 45,000 was increase in social security. 10,000 increase in Medicare, and 17,000 increase in retirement medical. Those are the main ones. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Supervisor Thomas, thanks very much for being here. You're provide great value with some of your answers to us today. Seeing no other comments or discussion items, except a motion to adjourn. Supervisor McDevitt, second by Supervisor Diamond. Any discussion or question on that?